Okay, this is the Zen Ultra, and basically what this is, it's an 8-channel preamp where I have taken 6 channels made up of 3 independent 2-channel preamps and a final pair of channels for mixing. The way this operates is you have inputs for the front channel, which are right here. This is the front channel on the left, the OA3 voltage regulator tube, the driver stage, the cathode follower, and the volume control. And the output today is going to go straight into our scope so that we can see it. This is the right channel and the left channel is on the top. So as you can see, the volume control decides how loud that's going to be, and it's got plenty of nuts. It's 5 or 6 volts when it's fully cranked, so it's well, more than you need. Which is why it's ganged across four output jacks. Because what if if you felt like it, you could send this output to 4 separate amplifiers, and it would have enough drive to do that. Preferably tube amps. I'm not convinced that it would do a great job with solid state if the input impedance is 10K or less, but with tube gear it should never be a problem. And so anyway, the front channels are basically sacred. They are unaffected by any of these knobs, switches. Well, the input switch, it's affected by that obviously, but none of these other controls have any effect. And that's what you want. That's your main front, left, and right. So if you're setting up a 2-channel audiophile rig, that's your main front channels. You don't want them, monkeyed with, and you don't want a whole bunch of extra crap in the signal path. So with these, there's nothing that you can do except adjust the volume. That's just simply it, and as it should be in this case. So that's your front channels. The second set of channels, which we affectionately named the rear channels after home theater applications, but it could obviously be just another amp, a bi-amp setup maybe. But this is your second preamp, and it operates exactly like the first. It's got its own set of outputs, its own set of inputs, and its own volume control. And it's unaffected, by the front or anything else on the board. So that's a sacred pair of channels. And then we can move to the final pair, which we affectionately named center and sub. But again, could be anything. It could be your third amp in a tri-amp setup. And there it is. It's unaffected by any of these other controls. It's a sacred set of channels. So you have 3 sacred sets of channels with 3 volume controls. You can use them for whatever the hell you want. And that's basically how you would use it for home theater. You would take the discrete RCA outputs from the back of your decoder or Blu-ray player, and you'd plug the front, left, and right into this front pair, and you'd plug your rears into this rear pair, and your center and sub into this final pair, and then the exact same thing is duplicated over here, which you can send out to all your different amplifiers, and you have a control for every one of them right here. Makes life very simple and very easy when you're starting to watch a movie, for example, and you don't want to wait for the previews to find out if your sub is working or not, or to get your channels balanced right. You just simply start it up. The previews are going to be in 2-channel, so let's just simulate that. Let's say the previews are going, and we've got it on the front channels. Okay, so you're watching the previews, and you can't tell if your sub is turned on or not, and you don't know if the rear channels are working because the preview is in stereo, and so is the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You get the idea. Really, you can't, you have to wait until the movie starts to find out if your rear channels are working properly and if your center and sub are working properly. Which is very annoying when they aren't, and you spend all that time. So with this setup, all we do is we're watching the previews. We've got the front channels dialed up. They're the volume that we like. It sounds good. Everything's great. Now let's hear what the rear channels are doing. So let me just hook those to the scope so that we can see. Well, they're not doing anything yet, but they're going to be, because we'll simply take this switch and flip it to mixed, turn up the rear channel, and turn up the mix master. And there's our rear channels. Oh yeah, they're working fine. They sound good. Alright, no problem. Flip this, flip the switch back to normal. they go away. Center and sub is exactly the same thing. You turn the center and sub up. The mix master is already up. Flip the switch. There's the center and sub. Okay, the center channel's working. The sub's working. It all sounds good. Flip it back to normal. Now we just have the 2 front channels. And we're still watching the previews, but we know everything works now. And basically all we do is wait for the movie to start and then make an adjustment by ear to the rear channels and an adjustment by ear to the center channel. Your sub tracks the center channel, so you never worry about the level of the sub. It's keyed off the center channel, and that's another discussion. But anyway, that's how that works. So basically, you can do the same thing when you're listening to 2-channel audio. You can just for fun turn on your rear channels and your center and sub and blend them in gradually. Alright, I can't really simulate it here, but something that I forgot to mention in the last part of the last video is that these 3 independent sacred channels, well, 6 sacred channels, 3 pairs. I think of it as preamp A, preamp B, preamp C. Preamp A is doing the front channels. Preamp B is doing the rear channels. Preamp C is doing the center and the sub. And because they're sacred channels, there's no adjustment other than the volume for each one. That's it. So whatever's coming into each of the inputs, the front, you can't see it very well probably, but the fronts are right here, the rears are right here, and the center and the subs right next to it, and then the same as, it's mirror imaged on the other side. These are all your outputs here. So it's important to understand that, during 5.1 movies, you're in direct mode, which is what we call normal. That means you're using the 3 preamps just directly hooked to the outputs of your Blu-ray player, the discrete RCA outputs from the back of your decoder or Blu-ray player. If, for whatever reason, you're watching the movie and the rears just, you don't know what kind of acid trip the engineer was on when he mixed the rear channels, and it's distracting the hell out of you. So, you got those turned down a little bit, and even then it's annoying. But everything else is okay. You make a little adjustment to the center channel and the fronts, and it's all good. But damn it, those rear channels. And you know what I'm talking about. We've all watched movies like this or music videos. It's even more obvious on those. So, I can make the rears go away, but that'd be no fun because it seems like there's a huge hole in the room now. So what do you do in a case like this? Well, screw the rear channel soundtrack in the disc. I'm going to pull the information from the front channels. So I simply flip the rear channels to mixed. Now their source is no longer coming from these jacks, it's coming from these jacks, the front channels. And man, does it work great. Now I've got information going to the rear channels and it's constant. And all I have to do is dial the level just, to where it's not too much, not too little, and it just gives a nice feeling of fullness to the sound. And there's no more distraction because it's working. And you can do the exact same thing with the center and sub. I've had music videos where there was no bass at all, or some that the center channel was just vacant, and it's just not natural. Again, the engineers are on crack. So the way you fix it is, alright, the rears are fine, the fronts are fine, but the damn, you flip it to mixed and you just dial it in. Alright, now you've got a nice solid mono center channel. It's automatically mono sound, and it's centered, and it makes sense, right? So, and the sub is playing now. Well, hello, we have a sub. Awesome. And, they're keyed together. That always works. And then your mix master, you can use that if you happen to find yourself doing, fixing both the center, the sub, and the rear channels. You can control them both as a group. With this final control of the mix master, you can turn them up to where you had them, turn them all the way off. Or if you're smart, turn the mix master, to somewhere less than full, say about 3/4. Then set the levels on your center and sub and on your rears. Okay? Now you can use your mix master to adjust both of them up and down as a group relative to the front channel. So super powerful control, just really freaking hard to wrap your head around until you actually use it and start figuring out what this thing can do. And for what it can do, and for as simple as it actually is, you know, there's not a circuit board or a solid state part in there, no chips, no logic, no bullshit, just straight analog, lasts for 50 years, point to point, lifetime, you know, product.